In this video, I want to take a look at a correspondence game that I played against Niche 45. And as you can see, I'm about 1,000 points higher rated than my opponent. And my opponent played surprisingly well for the most of the game. And at the end, he just blundered badly. But I like to use these longer time controls to play openings and lines that I don't usually play, simply because it allows me to uh, play things without blundering, usually. And well, this is an example of C3 Sicilian, which I don't play, the Alapin Variation, which is another name for it. And well, the idea is pretty straightforward. You want to play d4 and get the two pawns in the center of the board. But I decided not to play d4 right away. I played f4, which is not considered to be very good. After f4, the computer thinks that black has equalized already, so and here I played a queen c2, which I didn't know it was theory. I mean, here e6, I'm not sure I like this move that much, because you're blocking in the leg square bishop, and usually when you're playing a Sicilian as black and your opponent doesn't play d4, you a lot of the times play g6 and you fianchetto the bishop. Here I pretty much had like two choices: bishop e2, which is more passive, or the b5 square, but then the bishop can get kicked back with a6. So being so early in the game, I was reluctant to give up the two bishops, simply because the position could just open up, and that would be good for my opponent. And here my opponent played a move I don't like. I don't think during the game it was that bad, but after analyzing this game, the computer doesn't like it, and well, one of the reasons I don't like it is because now that this bishop is really only gonna go to d7 if it's ever gonna get developed, whereas when you move the queen, if instead of moving the queen, then you could potentially go b6 and put this bishop on this diagonal, which would be much more active. It would be a more aggressive piece if you could ever get rid of this pawn. And as you will see later on in the game, queen on b6 is misplaced, so just a move like castling would have been good. I mean, it's just sensible to castle, especially when you're playing such a high rated opponent. And here I just play d3 because I'm not really concerned about c4, because this check doesn't really do anything. It just allows me to push the pawn, and now I have this control of the center, which is this huge pawn chain. And well, you can see the evaluation. White is just has an advantage. So d3 just reinforcing the pawn. That way, if I ever want to move the queen, I don't have to worry about the pawn being captured. So castles and king h1. Again, I know that c4 is not really an issue because I can push the pawn, but potentially the tactics might change and work out for black, so I just before continuing my development, I just want to make sure to get out of that diagonal. E5, which I don't really like. I mean, the engine's thing is like one of the top 3 moves, maybe the second best move. I just don't like it because you played e6 first, and now you're wasting another move playing e5. So I just think that playing another move would have been better. Just developing the bishop or moving one of the rooks. And here I took, which is not very good. The engines preferred knight a3 with the idea of going to c4, taking the queen. But after this, my idea is simply that these pawns, although technically not isolated, they are potentially weak. And I just think that my pawn structure is better. Bishop e3, which pins the pawn. So potentially I may have ideas of b4, depending on what my opponent plays. Knight g4, which is a move I obviously saw when I played bishop e3. So I just go back to g1 and I'm fine. And now the queen goes back to c7. So already we've seen then black has lost basically for tempi because he played e6, then e5, and queen b6, and now queen back to c7. So at this point I was pretty happy with my position. Knight bd2. I could come to c4 at some point, but now that the queen is on c7, b5 might be annoying. But really I'm just developing my pieces so that my rooks are connected and I can bring my rooks to one of the center files. Bishop e6, h3, and here my opponent blundered with knight h6. He was trying to get fancy, but now this knight has nowhere to go. All the squares are unavailable. Going back to f6 was pretty much the only move. After this, the engines give white an advantage. Bishop h2, which hints at the idea of eventually playing d4. And here my opponent played another bad move, which is the idea behind knight h6. He wants to go f5, but this is just bad tactically. The engines give this as a better try. And here I played this rook move. The engines say that I missed win with d4 immediately. So if takes, rook a d8, allowing this fork. You can also take here, which is a similar variation to what we have here. So now you take and takes, and even the material is technically the same, white is just winning. If you let the engine analyze it deep enough, it goes to like almost plus 2.5. So almost like a piece up. And here my opponent played f4, which I don't like because I've said this in a number of videos. Usually it is the weaker player that releases the tension between the two pawns. So right now there's tension between the pawns. They're both attacking one another, and it's the weaker player that usually releases that tension either by capturing or by pushing the pawns. And now I played d4 because I saw that it was just good for me, because if you take with the c pawn, the knight is potentially pinned to the queen. I'm threatening d5, winning a piece. And here my opponent took with the c pawn. A better defensive try is taking with the e pawn. The point is, after you take, you have knight b4. Whereas after c takes, you don't have that, because now knight b4, well, you lose the queen. And well, here you can't take again because of the pin, but my opponent got greedy and just blundered with bishop takes on a2. The best move is bishop d7, but I think myself I would have played bishop f7, just because I was worried about this diagonal, something like bishop c4 check, and now b3, and you're losing a bishop. I think if I had black, I probably would just take the two pawns for the piece and just like start pushing these pawns quickly, and only then maybe bring the other rook to the b file. Instead, my opponent just attacks the rook, which doesn't really do much because I just attacked the bishop, and knight b4, which I don't know how you can make a move like that in a correspondence game. I mean, your queen is hanging. And instead of resigning, my opponent played bishop f6. And now my opponent resigned because, well, it's a double attack. I'm going to win the knight, which is defending the bishop. So he's going to lose the knight and then the bishop. And he's already down a queen. So interestingly, we played two games. The second game, my opponent played much better. It's almost like a different person was playing. And that game lasted twice as long. Instead of 23 moves, that game lasted 46 moves. So exactly double the moves. And even at the end of that game, I think the position was rather equal-ish. So I'm going to analyze that game next. Anyway, if you like the video, do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you for watching.